Well, good morning, all of you. It's a lovely sunny morning where we are. I am rather, and I think where Pat is in his part of free Ireland, he's having the sunbathing virtually. Is that right? Were you out sunbathing
Yeah,
in your garden?
I was outside there earlier. It's beautiful. And the only thing, the downside is when you get a nice day, and I have to go and cut the lawn.
Ah,
And it's a big bloody lawn.
but
Now,
Pat,
if you had one of those ride on mowers, Jude, would be great. But I have one of those old-fashioned ones that you push. Well, it's got an engine, but it's not the greatest engine.
Pat,
Anyway,
you should deliberately sabotage your own lawnmower and say, "Ah, it's broken. I
yeah,
can't do it."
uh, yeah. And what is the garden?
Yes, that's right. Perfectly
Yeah,
respectable. I tried to do
yeah.
that with our garden, and I turn around every so often, and I find my wife, when I was out of the house, has hired a man to come and cut it.
I unwilded.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, let's get to business here, Pat, because there's so many stories that are worth looking at. One of them, and it caught my eye very much, and I think you saw it too. It's in the Irish Times, and the heading is something like Higgins lectured us about the atrocities being committed by Israel, says Chief Rabbi in Ireland.
Yeah.
And in a sense, he's right. Michael D. Higgins gave out about the extent to which I'm not sure what was it. Did he give out the extent to which people were being anti-Semite in Ireland, or was he giving out about the extent to which any criticism of Israel was interpreted as being anti-Semitic?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both.
Mm.
I think he, right. First thing, the Irish Times has done 3 or 4 articles, and in fact, I saw a Jewish lady on social media this morning actually saying the Irish Times is becoming a very reactionary paper, and there's an element of truth in that. Jude, they're playing this one that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. Jude, I am highly, highly critical, as are you, of what's happening in Gaza. But I am not. I would absolutely reject all claims that I am anti-Semitic. I have nothing whatever against the Jews or Israelis or anybody. You know, as long as those people believe in decent human rights and the rights of the people of Palestine. Dude,
Well,
what is under God is wrong with saying the killing of 35,000 people, the wounding of 70,000, the absolute obliteration of Gaza? What's wrong with saying that as morally wrong?
well,
That's not
he,
anti-Semitism. But getting back to
yeah,
our friend Michael D. The chief rabbi is a guy called Yoni White. I wrote it down.
yeah.
He says he didn't seem to understand. Higgins didn't seem to understand that the tension that been felt within the Jewish community in Ireland, and he says they felt that they were being delegitimized and
Uh,
so on. And he says, he says, uh, Higgins suggests that some Jews spokespersons were encouraging fear. There's no doubt about that. If you read X or Facebook, Jewish leaders are saying we're now under threat and we need to stand alone, all that sort of stuff.
but maybe
Nobody's
they
asked them to
are they
stand
not?
alone.
Is there not a possibility that they are?
I think there's real anger across the world that Israel is getting away with literally murder because it is murder.
Okay.
When you drop a 2,000 pound bomb in a
Uh,
house of total innocent people, I regard that as murder.
but we're not talking about Israel now. We're talking about the Jews in Ireland.
Yeah.
Are they not right to say that they are, there are people who are being nasty, sectarian, anti-Semitic to them?
Yeah, but there might be maybe certain people. Okay, I can't. I am not there, and I'm not Jewish, but it's a fact. There have been no attacks on any Jewish community in
Yeah.
Ireland. That's a fact.
Well,
There have been in other countries, but not in Ireland.
this is
But I think
something.
this sort.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say this is something that's coming up. I find it very interesting. It's coming up in Ireland. It's coming up in Britain. It's coming up in America, where people, Jewish people who wear the little cap and all, are saying,
Kaplan.
we're really coming under opposition and even abuse. Once they see our skull cap or whatever it's called,
Yeah,
they start shouting at us and blaming us and so on. Now, you and I are agreed that the Jewish people is one thing, the state of Israel is another thing. They're not the
yeah,
same. They're not the same. That there are, in fact, quite a number of Jewish people living in America or living in England or living in Ireland who are opposed to what Israel is doing. But, and this is an important but, many, I would suggest to you, Pat, many, if not most, Irish Jewish people, many, if not most, English Jewish people, many, if not most, American Jewish people support Israel and will support Israel to the.
Absolutely. I thought you were going to say something different there.
But you see,
Absolutely.
I'm saying that, are you implying that what I said wasn't important? The point I'm making is there is a connection between the ordinary Jew who lives in whatever country and
Yeah.
Israel, and it's kind of understandable. It's their kith and kin that are out there and are fighting a war for survival, as they say it.
Yeah.
So I would say, here's what I put. I'd say about 80% of Jewish people throughout the world, let's say America, England, and Ireland, they are
Yeah.
with Israel all the way. Would that be true?
Yeah.
Think I'm exaggerating?
Well, yeah. But but there are also many people who are objecting to what's happening in Gaza, Jewish people. So, but
Aye, that's true. That's true.
but I take your point, Jude. I think the vast majority of Jewish people in the world are with Israel. That's simply it's an emotional tie, and
Mhm.
my country, right or wrong, even though they know
Yeah.
it's wrong, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
agree totally with that. But right then, there's people like Bernie Sanders, who has come out time and time again, and he's Jewish, and he's had to go with it. There's Schumacher, what do you call him? I can't remember his first name. The Democrat Chuck Schumacher. He's had a fair old go at what's happening in
Yeah.
that. There's protests in Israel about the conduct of the war. Now, a lot of that's by the hostages' families, but there's also considerable distaste for Netanyahu
Uh-huh.
in Israel itself. So it's not as quite as simple. But your overall thesis is right.
Aye,
Eighty
but you see,
percent, I would
Pat,
think, of Israelis back, or 80% of Jews back Israel.
you see we've talked to this topic quite a few times, and I think this is the first time we've talked about that. And it is a
Yeah,
fact that people who aren't Israelis by any means, but they're Jewish and been living in Ireland or America, wherever, for donkey's years, they still feel a fellowship and would be supporters of Israel. And
yeah,
okay, they don't want to see them commit atrocities, but if that's what it takes to survive, yeah, definitely we're with them all the
yeah,
way. So you see,
yeah,
in a way, they're using their Jewishness as a shield. Then if somebody attacks Israel, they say, "Oh, you're attacking us." You know,
yeah.
they're
But
joining.
we've been doing this road before, all right. One of the things I think is now it's lost its currency, or whatever term you'd want to use. This
Yeah.
now, throwing out the allegations of anti-Semitism, no sort of like confetti at a wedding. I think it's lost all power. Totally legitimate criticism. By the way, just moving on. What was the scene yesterday? All right, there's a guy called Feinstein. Can't remember his first name. Former South African MP, served under Nelson Mandela. He's standing against Sir Keir Starmer in his North London constituency.
Yeah.
Feinstein, I'd say, I would think Starmer is quite worried about it because Feinstein is Jewish. His mother's people, most of them were liquidated in the concentration camps, and so on. And he is said he finds Starmer's position on Gaza, absolutely reprehensible. Basically, he said Starmer said that it was all right to starve, deny water and food to Gazans. And then he said it showed how dishonest and unprincipled he was when challenged on it. He denied he had said it, even though the video evidence clearly said that he did. And he
Mm.
said he also pointed to the fact, and other things like he made 10 pledges to get elected
Yeah.
to the to be leader of the Labour Party and dropped every one of them. And he also was on the record as describing Jeremy Corbyn as his friend when he needed to get elected. And then when he got elected, said he'd never said Corbyn was his
Yeah.
friend. So the whole thing, Gaza is dividing the world big time. Look, 1,000 students walked out of the graduations, and Harvard, no, the elite Harvard University, 1,000 students walked out on Friday when the main speaker or the president of the college was speaking and protest because I think it's 13 pro-Palestinian students are
Mm-hmm.
being denied their degrees because of their protests. So
Yeah.
that's all. That's just a wee snapshot of what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Well, I must say that I was going to say all of those demonstrations on behalf of Gaza and the Palestinian people give me
yeah,
heart. But then I remember that, the guys who are in power can just take somebody and throw them to the wolves. You take uh, our friend Keir Starmer, he can take Jeremy Corbyn and pitch him out of the party. I looking at Jeremy Corbyn on a YouTube thing last night, and he's saying, I've been in the Labour Party for 58 years.
yeah,
And how is it only now they're saying, oh, they just noticed that I am anti-Semitic? It's a load of rubbish.
yeah.
So I'm kind of heartened by what you say about the guy. Is it Goldstein or Feinstein or
Feinstein.
Feinstein? I think that's good because it'll give a chance to call Keir Starmer's bluff. I don't think he'll win the seat, but he'll be able to air a few of the things that many of us are feeling about the way
Yeah.
Starmer's gone around, purging anybody that he thinks is opposition. And of course, he's got is it his deputy leader of the party is Jewish, Rachel
I think
Reeves,
so.
I think.
I can't remember. Yeah, the red-haired girl, isn't she the deputy? No, but
No, you're right.
Starmer's wife is Jewish, and apparently
but
they
there's
Shiva or whatever the hell they call it on a Friday night and all this sort of stuff.
yeah.
So,
Well, there's also on his cabinet, I think maybe she's education or something. One of them is Jewish, which is absolutely fine. But it's you sort of lose heart when you see these people right so close to Starmer, allowing him to get away with the stuff he's getting away with, claiming that the likes of Corbyn is
but you know one other thing before we leave this.
yeah.
Starmer was a former human rights lawyer. And I find it unbelievable the lack of principle or the lack of conscience or whatever it is that a man who was a former human rights lawyer, when asked by a reporter, is it all right for Israel to turn off the water, the food, the electricity supply, the medicines to? And he says, yeah. Jude, anyway.
There's lots of time to talk about it, but I think the feeling we have towards them, let us say we're not alone. We are not alone.
No.
Okay, let's get to a really radical idea. Now, this is one that was again in an article in today's Irish Times, and it is that the idea of using. Now, I pull you up when you talk about the country, your country, and I say it's a state, but the point they're making is the word a country, talk about countries anywhere in the world, is that a useful term anymore with the challenge of climate crisis and the challenge of AI? In other words, it's saying, should we be looking at ourselves as a citizen of the world and be concerned for those things? And is the notion of being a citizen of Ireland or Great Britain or whatever something that's narrow and almost past its peak? What do you think, Pat?
Yeah.
John Hume. Tell us about John Hume.
Well, right. No, I'll let you get that one. What did Hume refuse to say?
John Hume said a long time ago, early in the Troubles, he said, Ireland is post-nationalist country. And, that came back and bit him in the bum big time because there clearly was a very strong nationalist streak in the Irish people. And I mean, that's what the Troubles were all about, I think, or at least a great part of it. But I always thought, while he got it wrong at that particular place and time, he has a point. If you think about it, EU, for example, is an amalgam of nations and joint decisions are taken. They've got the same currency. There's a lot of, post-nationalist stuff happening in the EU, for example. And then globalist stuff is really essentially bypassing the individual state and emphasizing mankind working together, or humankind, as we must now say. What do you think? Do you think that's just pushing boat out too far?
No, what is Theresa May said? A citizen of the world is somebody who's a citizen of no place. There's an element to, and I remember Hume coming down to my office one day when I was in my other life when I was editor of the Derry Journal many years ago. And he said to me, we're now living in a post-nationalist world. And I said to him, John, are you kidding? You tell people in Derry that they're living in a post-nationalist world. They're fighting for a nationalist identity. And he said, being a Frenchman and being part of the EU doesn't make you any less French, and so on. And like John says, when I go to France, I like going and having a glass of wine and whatever, and cheese and all the rest of it, and so on. And so, but I think to say that we, Jude, people, I don't know what is I've seen old Irishmen in America with tears dripping them when they start singing songs about Ireland and the
Yeah.
place they were born.
Mm.
Nelson Mandela, as far as I remember, said as you get older, that there's a thing in your head that you want to go close or go back to the place you were born. There's almost a sort of thing. And if you talk, which I did, by the way, I've talked to people in Australia, I've talked to people in Europe, talked to people in America, old people, and they dream about the days of their youth back where they're born, and Irish
Mm.
people I'm talking about, and so
Mm.
on. So there's something inherent or genetic or use the word whatever one you want, and I think it's all part of. And I don't buy this thing that we're citizens of the world. The only person I ever knew that could just was Rupert Murdoch. One day he was Australian, and then for several years he was British, and then the next thing he moved to off
Yeah.
to America,
Uh,
and so on. But
but
that, I presume money's bought his primary motivation was making money.
well, here's a challenge, and I mean, it'd be interesting to look at examples. But let's say theoretically, a country starts abusing its citizens, the government
Yeah,
say, starts abusing, putting people in prison for nothing, shooting them, really just law and order breaking down. Should other countries come in and save the people of that country from these people who are doing really bad things, their own?
yeah,
Or should you say,
yeah.
we respect their boundaries, that's their affair, leave them to decide?
Yeah. Well, sure. Look at remember Britain when the Republic. Sure. If you look at it, I guess I'm going to digression. I know, but we are at. It's not our local government minister that deals with Northern Ireland. It's the Minister for Foreign Affairs, because Britain's. That's symbolic in its own, because Britain says this is an internal matter and it's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So, Jude, if you think of what about Rwanda, what the Houthis and the Tutsis, whatever they call them, in a space of about, what was it, about 2 weeks, 800,000, I think, were killed. Some of them in the most brutal way, using sledgehammers, and it wasn't
Mm,
machine guns; it was
mm.
nearly hand to hand with swords and whatever, and machetes and whatever. Should the world just stand back and watch that? But like, right, the other thing, should say tomorrow morning there was riots in London, and the Tory government brought out machine guns and started shooting people.
Yeah.
Like, would Ireland or France or Germany say we have the right to interfere there? No, you know.
Well, I don't know, Pat. I think a lot of people would say yes. They would say, listen, you can't, it doesn't matter who, if this, even this government was elected, look at the things they're doing. Those are crimes against humanity. And, you
Yeah,
have the UN, that's another
yeah,
supranational body. We've got to protect people. I often think of this when the astronauts went into space and they looked back and saw this little blue bubble or
globe.
globe. Uh, that's us. We're all human beings. And surely
Yeah.
we should be, the idea of states is perhaps, well, let's put it like this. Many, many wars have been fought in the name of nationalism. And we're doing it again, of course. We're saying Russia
Mm,
has invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting back. That's
mm,
because you have this division in terms of nationalism. If there wasn't
mm.
that, if the people saw themselves as being citizens of the world and therefore, were governed in that way with that in mind, with good principles in place, would that not make more sense in a way?
Yeah. But look back. Hey, even that, like Cullen and the Brown Bull of Cooley, there was these communities, and they fought against other communities. And
Yeah.
it happens all over the world. There was
Aye.
various Andean tribes who raided each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's the whole thing about community. Maybe they have more than, and if we stole more of their cattle, we'd be richer and we'd be more health, or we
Yeah.
wouldn't be starving. So
Aye.
there's two groupings. There's the communitarians and there's the cosmopolitans. So the communitarians are people who believe that we're all members of some community, and then there's other ones who sort of said, "Oh, we're living in a post-nationalist world. The world's become a small place. I
Yeah.
can be in even in Australia. It used to take 6 months to get there by boat. Now I
Aye.
can be there in 24 hours type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's all that sort of thing. But
Shrinking world.
the question is, does statehood or nation state matter these days? And I'm saying unequivocally yes. There's 193 states, I think, in the world today, and Palestine wants to be 194.
Well, Yeah, I honestly, I'm divided in this. I accept the fact the point you're making, and you do feel a closeness and an affinity with people from your own country. And I'd be proud of my country. And
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of British people are proud of their country,
yeah,
or
yeah.
English people, or Scottish people, or whatever. But the fact is that mankind is evolving, and things like the UN, the idea that still isn't some sort of organized body that makes sure, just as on a national level, we have organized bodies called policemen who see to it, by and large, that the law and order is kept. If you had that on a global scale, would that not be better than these savage wars that go on and on and on, like Gaza and Ukraine and so on? It just seems to
Uh,
me we should be pushing for something more.
Jude, would it not be better that if we sort of had a, rather than having a
Yeah,
supranational body, that we have cooperation? Like, look at it. You need to go. That's probably not a great, but we're going back in. Like, look at last week, the International Court of Justice,
yeah,
our International Criminal Court
yeah, yeah, yeah.
issued a warrant for our sixth issue warrant. Don't know if it's issued it yet, for Netanyahu and Galant and three Hamas. But, you know, they're trying to do it in a sort of in cooperation with other countries. Is that not like, how does it work? It's, do we put in place a super body that can interfere in domestic affairs, or do we work together and sort of say, look, what's going on there is wrong, and if they
Oh.
come to your country, we arrest them?
Aye, but you see, you wouldn't do that on the national level. Your policeman wouldn't
Yeah,
say, so and so's drunk driving.
yeah,
We'll have to tell him he's doing the wrong thing there, but actually, we'll not arrest him or put him in prison or anything. I think that's
yeah,
it. Most of us, my heart sank when I heard the International ICC, or whatever it's called, whenever they
yeah.
condemned Netanyahu and the Hamas for what they did on October the 7th. I said, "Oh, great," but then I realized they don't have the muscle to enforce it, and
Mm.
they won't
No.
enforce it. Now that's making a mockery of something that could be really good. I think if
Mm.
law and order is worth keeping on a national level, it's surely worth keeping even more so on an international level.
Yeah, but the point is that they won't they can't put their hand on and scoop Netanyahu out of Israel. But they
They
can
could
ask
if they
other
wanted
country. They
to.
can
They
ask.
could if they wanted to enough. They could if they wanted to. Joe Biden could switch off the tap of our arms, and in no time at all,
But that's cooperation rather than But the ICJ has no authority or no mandate to. I know who would arrest Netanyahu and
but
Israel if they
well,
sent them. If they sent in a couple of cops, the
well,
Israeli defense forces would probably shoot them.
but we talk about Ireland having a peace keeping force. We're going a peacekeeping rule to different countries. I mean, if that was really muscled up, then yeah, an awful lot of conflict could be avoided. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's a theoretical thing, but I often think we really are still very primitive. We say, look,
yeah.
as long as we can look after our own affairs, then that's the way we should keep going on. And yet, when you allow countries to look after their own affairs, inevitably you're going to have friction, and eventually you're going to have thousands of people being killed.
So,
Uh,
Neanderthal man used to sit around the fire, and there's still a hell of a lot of that in our brains.
Last point, you see Ukraine and Russia. I used to
Yeah.
teach kids from both backgrounds in Canada, and
Mm.
I would have defied anybody to identify one from the other. Uh,
Yeah.
they had the same sort of look, appearance, way of thinking,
A lot of them
talking.
same language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So really, there's a case to be made for John Hume's much maligned
Most
statement.
nationals worded, yeah.
Okay. Um, well, let's go to this other one. This is a nice little one. Keir Starmer, no, not Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak has suggested that national service should be brought back. Not in the sense that you'd put people into, I was going to say into jail, but into the army for 2 years, but they could if they wanted to. But in terms of essentially community service, as I saw it. Now, some of the newspapers have declared that it is bonkers, and some military people have declared it's bonkers. What do you think of it as an idea?
Their own defense ministers 2 days before he announced it. Said when asked about it, obviously the defense minister, I think his name is Morrison or something. He said, "We have no plans whatsoever, and it's a stupid idea, and it'll cost a fortune." 2 days later, it's the big idea. Jude, let's go back a bit. If you ever want a complete balls up of a campaign, Rishi Sunak, really right. First of all, he comes out. The only person who looked surprised when they announced the election was himself, and he was announcing it. He got soaked to the skin, looked like a drowned rat. Right? He goes to Wales, to Cardiff, and he starts talking about the European football thing. Wales haven't qualified for it. He comes to he comes to Belfast, and he says he starts chatting in the Titanic quarter. And one of the reporters, I think it was the BBC girl, says, "You sure you aren't the captain of a sinking ship?" And then he took the weekend off to reignite his campaign or rethink it. And then he comes out. They come out with this one cleverly. I think it was it cleverly announced. I can't remember, or was it Sunak? And apparently, right. I wrote it down. What is it? Admiral Alan West, a former chief of the naval staff, said the idea was bonkers. Richard Dannett, who's always on the telly, he's the former chief of general staff. He described it as electoral opportunism. It's going to cost 2.5 billion. And if Jude, say your son is 21 years of age or 18 or whatever the hell he is, and he says, "Bugger off, Anna. There's no penalty. You can't be sent to prison." Can you imagine young, alienated black guys, in particular in certain parts of London, who feel that the whole system is loaded against them, that the police are racist, and all the rest of it? Can you imagine? Oh, by the way, you're joining the army, and you're sent, and if anything goes wrong, you'll be on the front line in any war against Russia or whatever. They're going to say, "Bugger off."
Well,
And by the way, that's and what about all the rich young kids, the white guys whose mommy and daddies drive Range Rovers and live in Belgravia? They're certainly not going to join it. So, Jude, I'd love to know how it's going to work.
well, one of the things is that it would be wrong to paint it solely as being like national service. In other words, joining the army or the navy or the air force, because that wouldn't wash. Certainly in the north of Ireland, not a chance. But they have said other things, community service. And I think back to, remember the Peace Corps? Do you remember the Kennedy
Yeah,
had this idea? And
yeah,
young people went out to what was then called the Third World and worked
yeah,
for the good of the people. I thought that was a very good idea, actually, because it's calling on something that's within all of us, unselfishness, instead of encouraging us during those couple of years, get as much as you can together and start looking after number one. I think it's a good idea, but how you'd implement it, I'm not sure. But look, there, for example, people talk about the problems of the climate and the way that the countryside is being treated. Surely in the UK, you could have national service, which was essentially helping to develop green energy or helping to protect the environment or helping to protect the landscape. That would be a great thing to do. And I think that young people are quite idealistic if the thing's set up properly for them.
yeah. But Jude, in fairness, I think Rishi, the primacy is the military service. You know, I don't think it's community service. I think he's going for like the old national service. When you're 18, you wear the uniform, you march, and you get your hair cut, and
No,
you
I don't think
teach you
that's
about
true,
this
Pat.
one.
No, you're doing justice. I think he left the door open to other forms of service. I know it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake to have you talked about national service, but
Yeah,
literally speaking, it would be true. They would be serving the nation rather than serving their own interests. But it
yeah.
wouldn't take the form
Well,
of
Jude,
guys square
no, Jude,
bashing.
I'm disagreeing. Now, okay, you could be right, but why have the former chief of staff of the Navy and the former chief of staff of the Army butted on here? Like I don't think the primacy is community service. I think it's
Well,
uh,
certainly one of the avenues was
uh,
the military. That's true. That's true. So they were
yeah,
right to say that. I agree. That's bonkers. I don't
uh,
think that'd do any good. That's a really old Tory idea,
yeah.
knock sparks of them, a sharp, what was it? A sharp, swift
Short, sharp
shock.
shock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, so I think that's daft. But I do think there's
Yeah.
possibilities in the other thing. There's plenty of things to be done.
Oh, yeah. Jude, if there was some, but here's the thing. Apparently, the British Army is now the smallest it's been since the time of Napoleon.
Yeah.
Uh, can you imagine, Jude, if they introduced a national military scheme or national service that between the ages of 18 and 20, you have to serve a year or 2 years. I'm not quite sure what it'll be. Right? Can you imagine the costs? Can you imagine the infrastructure? Can you imagine the staffing needs? And they said right away, a loan setting it up would cost somewhere in the region of 2.5 billion.
Mhm.
Right, how under God would they run it for starters? And the other thing is, right, if my 18-year-old son is heading off to university and he's told, oh no, how long you have to go for a year to do military or national service? How does that affect his schooling and all the rest of it?
Well, I suppose in the same way that the national service affected the schooling and so on up until whatever it was, 1957 or something.
But back then, very few people in Britain or Ireland of a certain age went to third level college. In
Yeah.
Ireland, what is it now? 80% go to third
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. I think actually part of it would be that if they could get them into that, essentially what you're doing is teaching people how to kill.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in the UK and maybe even in the West generally who are getting quite bloodthirsty. And there's more talk of war now than there has been for decades, I would say. So
But
it might even
I'm
matching
going.
that.
This is a total left curve for you.
Yeah.
My wife has this theory that all those games, that kids there's beheadings on them. Stood up to some of them, and there's blasting people with machine guns.
I
No,
know, but
she
come
has
on.
this theory, and I'm not saying she's right or she's wrong. I'm asking your opinion. She says it's almost, and there's also some of these games, some of them, there's quite a lot of sort of sexual innuendo,
Uh,
and so on. She
well,
reckons that their kids are getting desensitized to murder and to other human relations.
well,
When somebody awful sees somebody spraying on it, and then he climbs over a wall. And the wee fella sees it as a game. But
I go ahead, that
and
pass.
some of
Go
the
ahead,
games
that
that were actual beheading.
you're showing your age. When we were kids, we played cops and robbers. We played cowboys and Indians, and you were using pretend bow and arrow or shooting guys. Hit leather. Not we didn't say punk, but we would
Yeah.
kill each other and scalp each other. All sorts of violent things. Dude, that's all pretend little stuff. I agree that
No, no,
many of these games are
no,
gory,
Dr.
but
Combs,
what
this is different.
good a game.
These are games where there's actually visuals of beheadings and stuff like that.
Well, when we were kids, they used to catch the hen's neck and twist it, and the hen would be left on the ground there, and it would be
Yeah.
flopping around as it died. Oh God! I would never thought a
Yeah.
thing of it. Never thought a thing of it. So
Yeah.
there was always a certain amount of violence around us. Always, certainly if you were brought up on a farm. Um, I wouldn't put much store by that idea of games as being somehow corrupting. I would put
Yeah.
emphasis on the idea of taking people, teaching them how to shoot, teaching them how to march together, teaching them how to follow orders mindlessly because the orders were given by a superior officer. I would definitely disapprove of that. In fact, I think Ireland should take the lead and should now disband its armed forces because they're a waste of time and they could save any amount of money and put it into something
Yeah.
like housing, for
There's
example.
only 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
You're an experienced political. What do you
An
think
experience, what did you call me?
a political person? Right.
Right.
The big. I presume the central thing in this election will be whether there's going to be unionism pacts. There's two places in particular: North Down,
Yeah.
where Stephen Farry has a small majority, and in Fermanagh, where Michelle Gildernew is not going forward. She's running down south for an MEP.
Mhm.
And there's the unionists want pacts, or at least they're talking about them. On Friday, Gavin Robinson claimed he had been in touch with other unionist leaders to discuss pacts, and he didn't name the constituencies. But yesterday morning on Sunday Politics program, Jim Allister said Mr. Robinson, he said, announced on Friday, had been in talks with other unionist leaders about pacts, but he says he only rang me after the interview. He hadn't talked to me beforehand. And Jim Allister is making it clear that anywhere there's a DUP minister or MP, who's in favour of the protocol, the TUV and reform will have a candidate in that area. So, in other words, what do you make of it? Do you think, what are the chances? Two questions. What do you think the chances of unionist pacts in those areas are? And secondly, will the TUV decision to go into those areas or those constituencies where there's DUP MPs, will that affect the outcome of certain other ones?
Well, the first question, will there be? It might be a bit like, was it Gandhi that said when he was asked about Christianity, what he thought of it? He said it'd be a good idea to give it a try sometime. I'd say the same thing about a unionist pact. It'd be a good idea for them. It should maybe be tried sometime. But the fact that the most striking feature of unionism over the last 5-10 years has been the divisions within them. I mean, the TUV detests what they see as the sellout of the DUP. There's a hard core of the DUP who agree with him completely. So, yeah, I can't. And then the Ulster Unionists are dying to keep themselves clear somehow as having a different identity and more intelligent and so on. I can't see a pact coming off. I really can't. It would be good for them if they did, and it would maybe get them more seats, possibility. But even then, look at unionism, look at the DUP. Now, Peter Robinson, I never found him a very scintillating personality, but at least he sort of held the thing together. Gavin Robinson looks like, I don't know, a young guy who's been put to, who I think of along with him. I'm sorry to say this, Pat, but your new Taoiseach, I think the two of them look sort of not quite grown up, maybe. They're big and tall and so on, but they don't have that maturity or gravitas that leaders tend to have. So I wouldn't put much store by. If I'm glad, maybe put it like this, I'm glad I'm not a unionist, hoping for a good result come whenever the elections are held. And in fact, I'd say, well, you tell me, Pat, because you know about this, in Derry, where Sinn Féin did so badly last time, how are they going to do this time?
The last time was a very, very interesting. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in Derry the last time that even I wasn't aware how bad things were.
Okay, keep your eye on the clock.
There was all sorts of allegations of nepotism and Sinn Féin, and there was a lot of resentment and so on. And I remember I had been had a couple of friends in the SDLP, and I remember one of them ringing me up and telling me, "Oh, it's looking good for Colin Eastwood. He might win this by 400 or 500 votes, etc., etc., etc." I said, "Are you serious?" Oh, I said, "Yeah." No, it was, what do you call her? Alicia McCallan was the Sinn Féin one. Dude, no one saw that he would win by 17,000 votes. No one. Now there's then on. I only learned there a couple of days ago that the Sinn Féin candidate this time is a girl called Sandra Duffy, who's absolutely a lovely girl and all the rest. Yeah. So I think Eastwood will have a bigger fight on his hands this time. Sandra is a former mayor and all the rest of it. So, Jude, I think this election, I was watching you're right, the detestation between various forms of unionism is so rampant. You can see it everywhere. It's where there's the loyalists who detest the DUP, the DUP detest the TUV, the official unionists, God knows, they're trying to look the same as the Alliance Party. It's all over the place.
We're very near out of time. Quick prediction. Do you think will Sinn Féin make a comeback? Will Colin Eastwood hold his seat?
Yeah, I'd say he'll just about hold it, I think.
And do you think DUP and unionism generally have a bad election?
I don't think they'll have a good one. It depends. Now, Jude, if they agree a pact, they could take 2 seats. All right.
They're not going to do a pact. There's going to be no pact. No pact. No pact. Okay, Pat.
Okay, Judge.
Okay.
On that note,
we'll pursue this matter next time, and we'll solve all.
Okay, Jude.
Okay. All the best.